Good afternoon ladies and gentlemen, Virtus here and welcome back to my Unreal Engine 4 Level Design Essentials series. In today's video we are going to be taking a look at material surface properties on our BSP brushes. Now in the last video we showed you how you can actually place a material onto your BSP brush, however we have no control over the placement as of yet, and that is where BSP surface properties are going to come into play. So using these surface properties, if I just click on one of my BSP surfaces, you can see we have controls for panning, rotation, flipping, scaling, and some of it may sound a little bit too much, and I'm going to try and break it down and make it as simple as possible for you. Now before I do this, I want to explain exactly what a material is and how it's built, and then from there we can start placing this onto our BSP. So first things first, if you go into your content browser in the bottom left, go to starter content and then materials, as you can see I've done here. So content, starter content, and then materials. From here you can see we've got all of these materials. Now a material is essentially Unreal Engine shaders, and these shaders are made up of a bunch of images and properties. So what I mean by that is, you can see here I have got some colors which are coming in as texture samples, and then I've also got some values and properties which are going to control things like the metallic, the shininess, the roughness, if it glows, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And this is essentially what we're going to be putting onto our BSP. Now don't worry, we're going to be explaining materials in a bit more detail later on in the series, and also creating our very own materials as well. Now with these materials, they're really easy to put onto our BSP. There is two ways we can do it. The first way is by just clicking, dragging and dropping it onto the BSP surface, or alternatively, we can also just go into our content browser, select one wherever it is. So I'm going to choose this Pebblestone one, and then if I just press this little arrow here under surface materials at the very top of our details panel with one of these surfaces selected, I can press use selected asset from content browser. Give it a couple of seconds to compile the shader, and that is going to go straight onto our surface, and you can see we've now got like these stones on there and it looks kind of cool. Now the one I'm going to use for now is this Pebblestone one, just to show you how some of these surface properties work a little bit easier. So what I'm going to do is quickly put these pebbles all the way round on my little building here, on each and every single one of these places. Now one thing you might want to do is have a little bit more control over the size of these pebbles, and those pebbles are all on the material, and the way we can do that is using these surface properties. So the first property you've got at the top is for panning, which is essentially your way of moving them around the surface. So let me show you exactly what I'm talking about. So you have essentially got two different ways of moving things. So at the top you've got your U and V, which is essentially left and right, and by pressing this little arrow here you can control whether or not you're going to be moving it left or right. So I'm going to set this to go to the left, and then I'm going to just press a quarter each time, and it's just going to keep moving it and moving it. And if I go to 1/16th, it's going to do slightly smaller movements, 1/64th, it's slightly smaller, and that is essentially your way of moving it either left or right, and that is all done through the U. If I go down below here, we've once again got the same controls, 1/4, 1/16th, 1/64th, and 1/256. You press this button to control whether or not you want it to go up or down, and that is the V, and then you can just move it 1/4, 1/16th, and so on, and that's how you can move it around. So if you want to try and align this, then what you would do is just use these controls. Moving on from there, you also have some rotation controls as well. And this is just going to be either 45 degrees, 90 degrees, or alternatively, you can type in a custom number here. So if you wanted to rotate it by 56 degrees, for example, you just type it in, press enter, and it's going to make that change. And you can also press this little button here to toggle the rotation direction as well to make it go in the opposite direction. And one of the last ones you have over here is flip the U and flip the V. So if you remember, your U is going to be left or right, and then your V is going to be up and down. So you're flipping it upside down with the V, and you're flipping it from left to right with the U. And that's just your way of controlling all of this stuff. Now, the last one, and probably the most important one, is the scale on both the U and the V. Now, with this, you can control how big the material is going to show or how small the material is going to show. So let me show you exactly what I'm talking about. So if you want the material to be small, you could set this to something like 0.1, press apply, and you're going to see it's going to tile it. And now, instead of maybe 1,000 pebbles here, you can see we have hundreds of thousands, and it's essentially just tiled it to get this look. Now, generally you won't want to tile it this much as it can cause some issues, but if you think your material is just too big, you can use the scale tool to adjust this. A nice little number for this pebble texture could be something like 0.5. And now it's not too small, it's not too big. It's entirely up to you, and you have complete control over the look and the style that you're after. Anyway guys, that is pretty much everything that I wanted to go over for the material surface properties. Experiment with some of these controls and you will create something that looks really nice. Also play around with some of these different alignment options. I'm not going to explain them, just click them, try them, and you'll understand exactly what they do. They essentially just line up your textures. Anyway guys, thanks for watching, stay awesome, keep creating. Your boy Virtus, signing out. This video was made possible by my supporters on Patreon. If you want more videos like this, check out my Patreon page using the link in the description. To stay up to date on new releases, make sure you follow us on social media.